Let's get real. Hollywood wasn't always so buttoned up. Long before the censors locked down Tinseltown, the silver screen was bursting with stories so scandalous they'd still raise eyebrows and ratings today. What if I told you that some of the wildest, boldest films ever made came out nearly a century ago? Would you dare to watch them now? Strap in because we're counting down the top 12 pre-code movies that would send today's ratings board running for their red stamp. Which one will surprise you most? Babyface, 1933. If you think modern Hollywood pushes boundaries, Babyface kicked down the door and dared anyone to stop it. Starring the electrifying Barbara Stanwyck, this film didn't just flirt with controversy, it seduced it outright. The plot follows Lily Powers, a woman raised in the roughest part of town and exploited by her own father. After years of being treated as a commodity, Lily decides to turn the tables. She leaves for the big city and climbs the corporate ladder the only way men would let her, by using them. What makes Babyface legendary isn't just its daring premise. It's the way the film practically celebrates its protagonist's unapologetic ambition. Lily works her way up the ranks by charming, outwitting, and yes, seducing powerful men, leaving a trail of broken hearts and ruined careers behind her. At a time when audiences were mostly shown nice girls, Stanwyck's character shattered expectations with fearless determination. The censors lost their minds. Scenes were cut, endings were changed, and even after all the slicing and editing, the film still burned with intensity. The original uncut version was believed lost for decades, but when it finally resurfaced it stunned modern viewers once again. There's a reason critics and historians agree. If Babyface were released today, it would likely leap past an R rating and land firmly in NC-17 territory. The themes of exploitation, power struggles, and transactional relationships are raw and direct, with nothing softened or disguised. Stanwyck's performance remains unforgettable. In the end, Babyface isn't just a relic of the past. It's like a grenade thrown into the polite living room of early Hollywood. Even in the 21st century, it has more bite than many so-called edgy films. If you want to see how much chaos one determined woman can cause when society's rules don't apply, this is where you start. The Divorce, 1930. Talk about smashing taboos. The Divorce lit a match under every good girl expectation and let it burn. Norma Shearer, Hollywood's original queen of complicated roles, stars as Jerry Martin, a woman whose life spins out of control after her husband cheats and then expects her to simply forgive and forget. But Jerry refuses to be a doormat. Instead, she decides that if the rules don't apply to men, they certainly won't apply to her either. At a time when divorce was still whispered about in polite society, this film placed it front and center. Jerry responds by having her own affair, and the story refuses to label her strictly as villain or victim. It becomes a mature drama about double standards, female desire, and what happens when a woman claims her independence. And surprisingly, the film doesn't punish her with tragedy or shame. Instead, it asks a daring question. Why should she be judged for playing the same game as men? The censors predictably went berserk. Audiences at the time were shocked by the film's open discussion of marriage, infidelity, and a woman's right to live by her own choices. Shearer even won an Oscar for the performance, and The Divorce became a lightning rod for debates about what Hollywood should and shouldn't portray. If you think themes like sexual politics, gender hypocrisy, and moral complexity would pass unnoticed by today's ratings board, think again. This would easily be considered NC-17 material today. But that's exactly what makes The Divorce so thrilling even now. It's not just melodrama. It's a time capsule from a moment when Hollywood dared to take real risks and challenge audiences directly. Watch it and you'll realize how modern a 1930 film can feel. Jerry Martin walked so today's complex, empowered heroines could run. The Public Enemy, 1931. Ready for a jolt of pure adrenaline. The Public Enemy isn't just a gangster movie. It's the blueprint for nearly every outlaw anti-hero that came afterward. This is James Cagney's territory, and he doesn't gently step onto the screen. He explodes onto it. The film follows the rise and spectacular downfall of Tom Powers, a street-smart bootlegger fighting his way up the criminal underworld during Prohibition. At the time, America was waging a losing battle with its own temptations, and this movie made sure audiences felt every punch, every betrayal, and every burst from a Tommy gun. What makes The Public Enemy so shocking isn't only the violence, though there's plenty of it. It's the brutally honest way the film shows who gets hurt when a man chooses a criminal path. The infamous grapefruit scene, where Cagney smashes half a grapefruit into Mae Clark's face, became an instant symbol of how raw these films dared to be. The world portrayed here is filled with desperation, crooked deals, and people making ugly choices just to survive. The film didn't just shock censors, it made studio executives nervous as well. Here was a story that didn't apologize and didn't offer simple answers. It was too honest for comfort and too exciting to ignore. During an era when even carrying alcohol could get you arrested, The Public Enemy openly reveled in the vices society tried to hide. Beneath the gunfire and tough talk lies a powerful question. What turns a kid from a good family into Public Enemy number one? If the film were released today with its relentless violence and stark moral tone, the ratings board would likely stamp it with an NC-17 without hesitation. Cagney's performance crackles with dangerous energy, and the movie's legacy is undeniable. Nearly every gangsta film since owes it something. Blonde Crazy, 1931. If you think romantic comedies are all about moonlit strolls and last-minute kisses, Blonde Crazy is here to laugh at that idea. This is a romantic comedy mixed with crime, sarcasm, and a strong dose of mischief. The film stars James Cagney alongside the sparkling Joan Blondell in a clever con artist adventure. But don't let the title mislead you. This movie doesn't just flirt with trouble, it invites it in and gives it a drink. Cagney plays Bert, a charming bellhop with questionable morals. Blondell plays and his sharp-witted partner who matches him step for step. Instead of dreaming about a perfect romance, she joins Bert in scamming and hustling their way across the city. The dialogue fires rapidly, the chemistry between them crackles, and the betrayals appear almost as quickly as the jokes. What made Blonde Crazy so outrageous then, and still surprisingly daring today, is that the film refuses to judge its main characters. These are people who see a crooked world and decide to take advantage of it. The movie is full of sly innuendo, playful jokes, and situations that would still make ratings boards nervous. In one memorable scene, and is interrupted by Bert in her hotel room while wrapped only in a towel. The tension between them is obvious, and the dialogue cuts as sharply as a blade. Blondell delivers lines that sound strikingly modern, while Cagney keeps pace with every witty exchange. The censors tried to keep control, but the film's quick humor outran their scissors. Today Blonde Crazy would likely struggle to stay within an R rating, perhaps even drifting into NC-17 territory because of its relaxed view of questionable lifestyles and adult humor. For anyone tired of predictable romantic comedies, this film proves that Hollywood had a rebellious streak long before modern audiences realized it. Millie, 1931. Sometimes a film from the past feels so bold and modern that it almost leaps off the screen. Millie is one of those films. If you think stories about female independence, broken marriages, and complicated moral choices are modern inventions, think again. Millie explored those ideas nearly a century ago. Helen Twelvetree stars as Millie Blake, a woman who refuses to let society's rules dictate her life, even if that means facing scandal. The story begins with Millie marrying a wealthy New Yorker, but the dream quickly collapses when she discovers his infidelity. Instead of breaking down, she leaves him and decides to build a life for herself and her daughter. But Millie refuses to follow the safe and respectable path. She begins associating with women who survive by charming wealthy men. It's a world of cocktails, secrets, and closed doors, and Millie navigates it with intelligence and fierce determination. The film explores subjects that would still raise alarms today: affairs outside marriage, wealthy men keeping mistresses, manipulative relationships, and even the threat of violence toward Millie's daughter. There are no easy answers and no moral lectures. Just a complicated woman doing what she must to survive. Twelvetree's performance feels strikingly real, and the film's willingness to confront uncomfortable truths remains powerful even today. The censors attempted to bury Millie, but audiences were fascinated. The film became notorious for its depiction of female independence, sexuality, and the risks that come with challenging society's expectations. Call Her Savage, 1932. If you imagine 1930s Hollywood as polite and restrained, Call Her Savage will completely change that picture. This film bursts onto the screen with wild energy. Starring the magnetic Clara Bow, it's an intense story about rebellion, identity, and self-destructive choices. Bow plays NASA Springer, a fierce Texas woman whose behavior constantly shocks those around her. Raised in privilege but filled with frustration, NASA charges through life breaking rules and daring anyone to challenge her. She fights, drinks, enters reckless relationships, and even brawls with men. In an era when most heroines were expected to be gentle and reserved, NASA is explosive and unpredictable. What truly pushes Call Her Savage into shocking territory is its fearless approach to subjects that were controversial then and still attract attention today. The film includes provocative situations, flashes of rebellious fashion choices, and even a famous gay bar sequence that horrified censorship boards of the era. The story shows a woman openly embracing behaviors society labeled sinful, and doing so without apology. As the story progresses, NASA faces betrayal, heartbreak, and violence before ultimately becoming a single mother fighting to survive. The film is filled with chaos, fires, fights, scandals, and Bow's powerful performance drives the entire experience. Wild, emotional, and unforgettable, Call Her Savage is one of those movies that later decades of Hollywood simply would not have allowed. Red-Headed Woman, 1932. If any film proudly displays its defiance, it's Red-Headed Woman. Jean Harlow's Lil Andrews isn't merely a femme fatale, she's an unstoppable force. The movie made censorship boards panic while audiences cheered for its bold anti-heroine. Harlow moves through the film with a mischievous smile, grabbing opportunities and daring anyone to stop her. The premise is straightforward but explosive. Lil works as a secretary with enormous ambition and no interest in following society's rules. She seduces her married boss and then schemes her way higher into elite society, leaving broken marriages and damaged reputations behind her. The film overflows with playful innuendo, fearless seduction, and humor that feels surprisingly modern. What made Red-Headed Woman truly shocking then, and still surprising today, is that its main character faces almost no punishment. Lil never apologizes or begs forgiveness. She succeeds, manipulates situations, bends the truth, and pushes men to. The script pushes her to the edge and openly supports her every move. Censors tried desperately to control the character and insisted on dozens of edits, yet the movie still tore through theaters like a four-alarm blaze. There's a reason film historians constantly reference it as one of the most outrageous productions of the pre-code era. The film moves quickly, delivers sharp humor, and carries a wildly rebellious spirit. Lil's adventures would raise far more than eyebrows today. They would likely earn a strict NC-17 rating for their sexual candor, marital chaos, and pure attitude. Jean Harlow delivers a performance that feels like perfectly balanced chaos, and every scene sparks with wit and danger. Red-Headed Woman didn't simply bend the rules. It treated breaking them like a sport and challenged audiences not to enjoy it. Anyone who has ever rooted for a cinematic troublemaker owes a nod to Jean Harlow and this film for making that kind of character possible. 3 on a Match, 1932. Is the kind of film that may slip past your radar until the moment you watch it, and then it refuses to let go. The movie mixes melodrama, crime, and moral gray areas into a fast-moving story that would likely send modern ratings boards running for an NC-17 label. This is pre-code storytelling with real bite. The story follows 3 childhood friends, played by Joan Blondell and Dvorak and Betty Davis, whose lives move in drastically different directions as adults. At the center of it all is Dvorak's character Vivian, a restless society wife who falls into a dangerous spiral of gambling, addiction, and desperation. What begins as a simple wrong-turn narrative quickly expands into territory that Hollywood avoided for decades afterward. affairs, drugs, endangered children, and violent crime. The pace never slows, and the line between right and wrong becomes almost invisible. Vivian's downfall isn't softened or sanitized. The film shows her making reckless decisions while dragging everyone around her into the consequences. Meanwhile, the criminal world is portrayed in stark shadows, filled with tough operators and schemers. One infamous sequence involving a kidnapped child remains just as disturbing today as it was in 1932. Censors were horrified, but audiences couldn't look away. In barely an hour, the film delivers more scandal and tension than many modern thrillers manage in twice the time. Its blunt portrayal of addiction and self-destruction was shocking in its day, and even now it feels rare to see a story tackle such darkness with this much energy. If 3 on a Match debuted today, it likely wouldn't settle for an R rating. The film's honesty, criminal intensity, and emotional brutality would push it much further. That's also why it remains unforgettable. A story that never eases up, never softens the damage, and never apologizes for showing the messy reality of human choices. She Done Him Wrong, 1933, is the kind of movie whose star power alone can rewrite the rules. At the center is Mae West, a performer who practically perfected the art of double entendre. She plays Lady Lou, a bold and sharp-tongued saloon singer running a rough New York nightclub while keeping a keen eye on opportunity. The moment West appears on screen, it's clear the audience is watching something different. Lady Lou isn't merely independent. She makes independence look thrilling and dangerous. The film overflows with sly looks, suggestive humor, and dialogue that dances just beyond the limits of what was acceptable, even before censors intervened. "Why don't you come up sometime and see me?" wasn't simply flirtation, it was a challenge tossed directly at society. But the movie offers more than witty lines. The story involves criminals, betrayals, and plenty of scandal. Lou deals with persistent suitors, manipulates crooked lawmen, and navigates a world of shady characters without losing her composure. She's no helpless heroine. She's the storm everyone else must face. The portrayal of female confidence and control was decades ahead of its time. Censors attempted to tone down West's brilliance, but her charisma remained unstoppable. Even with edits and removed lines, the film still crackled with energy. If it appeared today, its bold sexuality and moral ambiguity would likely push it toward an NC-17 classification. Few films have ever captured the same Mae West magic. Confident, witty, seductive, and just a little dangerous. She Done Him Wrong stands as proof that daring women and daring stories have always found a way to shine. Mae West didn't just challenge boundaries. She reshaped the map. Night Nurse, 1931, proves that intense hospital dramas existed long before modern television. The film transforms white uniforms and medical wards into the setting for one of the most shocking thrillers of the pre-code period. Barbara Stanwyck plays Laura Hart, a young nurse who suddenly finds herself caught in a web of wealth, secrets, and criminal schemes. From the start, the movie confronts subjects censors wished would disappear: alcohol, violence, child abuse, and a gritty realism about life's darker corners. Laura isn't simply caring for patients. She uncovers a murderous plan targeting 2 helpless children. The film exposes the cruelty hidden behind privilege with startling directness. It also features Clark Gable, long before he became a Hollywood legend, portraying a cruel chauffeur whose presence alone creates tension. The violence shocked audiences of the early 1930s, with threats and disturbing scenes that left viewers stunned. What makes the film memorable, however, is its refusal to retreat. Stanwyck's character is determined and fearless, refusing to become anyone's victim. The censors struggled to contain the movie's boldness as it constantly pushed the limits. Even now, the combination of danger, child endangerment, and underlying sexual tension could easily trigger an NC-17 rating. Yet that fearless honesty is exactly why the film has endured. Night Nurse is quick, gritty, and unwilling to ignore the darker side of society. Scarface, 1932, stands as the original blueprint for the gangster genre. Every crime movie that followed owes something to it. Paul Muni gives an unforgettable performance as Tony Camonte, a ruthless criminal who climbs to power through violence and sheer ambition. The film doesn't aim for subtlety. It hits with the force of a hammer. From the opening moments, the movie unleashes gunfire, ambition, and chaos. Comanche isn't simply a criminal. He's a destructive force tearing through the underworld. Director Howard Hawks shows the rise and collapse of a man whose version of the American dream is pure conquest. The violence is stylized but brutal, with bodies piling up and gunshots echoing through the streets. Beneath the action lies a disturbing psychological layer, especially Tony's troubling obsession with his sister. The film openly mocks authority, which deeply alarmed censors. Its high body count and disregard for polite taste sparked national debates about film regulation and helped lead to the enforcement of the Hays Code. Even today, its relentless violence and moral darkness would likely push it beyond an R rating. Yet its raw power remains electrifying, proving why it still shocks audiences nearly a century later. Safe in Hell, 1931, delivers exactly what its title promises. A story set in a place where survival feels like walking through fire. This lesser-known Warner Brothers production boldly leaps beyond social limits. Dorothy McHale portrays Gilda, a New Orleans sex worker whose life has been filled with hardship. After killing a man in self-defense, she escapes to a chaotic Caribbean island populated by criminals and fugitives. From the moment she arrives, danger surrounds her. The island becomes a boiling mix of drifters, predators, and desperate people. The film refuses to soften its harsh reality, confronting prostitution, violence, addiction, and the brutal truth about life outside society's rules. What makes it especially shocking is its blunt attitude. The story never pretends virtue guarantees survival. Gilda isn't perfect, and the island offers no sanctuary. Threats appear constantly, and even the supposed heroes carry flaws. Censors despised its boldness, but audiences were stunned by its fearless portrayal of a woman navigating a lawless world. McHale's performance shows both strength and vulnerability, portraying someone determined not to become a victim. The film's ending remains as daring as the journey itself. In an era that often punished rebellious female characters, Safe in Hell presents a woman determined to survive on her own terms. After exploring all these pre-code shockers, the question remains: which one would you watch in broad daylight? Hollywood eventually closed the door on this rebellious era, but these movies still burn with fearless energy. Share your choice, subscribe, and send this to anyone convinced that classic films were always innocent. And if there's another boundary-breaking classic we missed, remember, Hollywood's past was full of rules waiting to be broken.